back to the lights.
Again, thank you for those of you who can't stay. I understand.
Okay, I was struck by the number of similarities between my town and Pottstown. Is the light person here? Yeah, would you take a crack at it? Okay. I like to work. All right. So, I was struck by a number of similarities between my town and Pottstown and your town and here is Pottstown, for those of you that haven't heard of it. Here's Philadelphia, here's the city of Reading. Pottstown's about halfway down between Pottsville's up here. If I had known, I just would have moved it up there. So anyway, this is our town. It's 5 square miles away from Latrobe. We're fully built out. Pottstown has a very historic home. John Potts is founder of Pottstown. He was an iron worker. We started off in the iron steel business, very similar to you. We have a traditional Main Street, although our Main Street's a lot wider than yours. We have historic neighborhoods, nice historic housing stock. We have some really nice houses here in Latrobe. We've got a lot of vacant warehouse buildings, or they used to be manufacturing buildings. And we have a lot of inappropriate development in our downtown. It's pretty unattractive. And then we have our biggest brownfield site, I guess you would say, is the former Bethlehem Steel site. So I said, we started off in Pottstown making iron, and we were doing iron in the 1800s and started getting into steel. And one of the steel companies evolved into Bethlehem Steel, and we fabricated the Golden Gate Bridge in Pottstown. We fabricated the George Washington Bridge in Pottstown, a lot of skyscrapers. And that all ended in 1975. Bethlehem Steel closed up shop. It lost 1,500 jobs. It was a real catastrophe for our town. But as Bethlehem Steel left Pottstown, they gave us a present, which was a study by the Urban Land Institute. They brought in experts in from around the country, spent a week in Pottstown, interviewed a lot of people, and they gave some recommendations. And the ULI study was so good that we brought them back in 1989 on our own dime to do yet another study. And a lot of good things that we did in Pottstown was a result of those two studies. And Alex was nice enough to give me a comprehensive plan, and I wrote through it. I thought it's an outstanding comprehensive plan. It's really well thought out. It's really well written. It's easy to follow, even though it's a lot of pages. You know, there's an executive summary. And I didn't see anything that I didn't think was a very, very fine review. Well, anyway, the ULI said that us in Pottstown, you have a lot of historic architecture. Take advantage of that. Create some historic districts, for heaven's sakes. And so the first building we did was our oldest building, 1723 Bristol. Now, in case you don't know, you need to know about historic preservation tax credits on the federal level. That's a 20% federal tax credit. So if you renovate a building that's either on the National Register by itself, which I see your comprehensive plan is recommended for Mozart Hall, or a less high standard if you create a historic district, the National Register Historic District, and you have a building that's in that district, and it's just even somewhat historic, contributing to the district, you can get the tax credit. So this one we put on the register by itself, and the developer got, in the 80s it was 25%, got 25% back. And this is right at the entryway to our town. Historic Bristol is now offices on the first floor, apartments on the other floors. And then we created 2 National Register historic districts, one in 85, one in 1990, and 2 local ordinance district ordinances. A federal register district doesn't force anybody to do anything to a building. It just makes it possible for you to get tax credits, which is extremely important. A local ordinance district sets up a board in your town that would judge whether or not renovations to buildings on the outside fit with the historic character of the town. So that was our first historic district. That's in our downtown area, right in the heart of our town of Pottstown. And this guy, 34 years old, and his wife, that's me, bought this building, $11,000, which wasn't expensive even then. It had been a former boarding house. You can see I'm getting the building, and I turned it into an apartment building. It cost $120,000 to renovate, and I got $25,000 back. Excuse me, I got $30,000 back from the federal government. It's a direct tax credit. It's a great way to encourage people to do buildings. You can do it for commercial, any kind of commercial, whether that's residential or whether stable became a plumbing warehouse. You can see it was totally burned out. That was done with historic preservation tax credits. It was done over as apartments, and on the first floor, there's a parking garage. Very lovely building. Our train station, our passenger train station, we used to be on the Reading Railroad and the Pennsylvania. We don't have any passenger train service anymore. This is now a bank done with tax credits. This building was done not too long ago. This is sort of our version of the Mellon Bank building, the Security Trust building. These three stores were vacant for more than 30 years. This was vacant for about 10 years. And just like this room right here has a vault, only this is now a restaurant. And the vault door is open, the whole thing. And it's a very popular place that was done with historic preservation tax credits. It was $4 million, and the developer gets $800,000 back from the federal government. Not a bad deal. And this was also helped with tax income financing. This was done not that long ago, maybe the last 5 or 6 years. And that's the front, and little sidewalk benches and chairs outside, tables and chairs outside. Now, another interesting similarity is not only do you have a satellite campus at the community college as we do, it's almost in the exact same place. The ULI, our second ULI study, Montgomery County is a huge county. We have 800,000 people. It's only next to Allegheny County in population, Philadelphia, Allegheny. And they had a huge community college in the center of the county. But the traffic congestion was so horrible that they said, well, we're going to open up some satellite campuses. And the ULI said, you need to get together as a community and make sure they put the first one in Potsdam. And I was an editorial writer for the paper at that time. We wrote a slew of editorials. We had the Chamber of Commerce behind it, the school district, the borough council. Everybody got behind this idea, and we sold them on the idea. Now, picture Lloyd Avenue. This is Howard Street coming right into our downtown. And we just happen to have a lot of woodlands right here. It was owned by the electric company. And this used to be the Pennsylvania Railroad, and they abandoned it. They used the Reading Railroad line now. And so part of this we put in a road, which made this accessible, and then we got PECO, the electric company, to give us a 100-year lease on the land. And this piece of land they gave us, and this is now our satellite campus of the community college. So we put in a road, and we had this built in 1994, I believe. This is a $15 million building. And now we've picked up 4 other buildings that are part of the campus, which I'll describe in a second. And then we also put in a greenway. And this goes along the edge of the Schuylkill River, the Mediterranean Creek, goes all the way to Reading right now. And someday, not too terribly far in the distance, you'll be able to go to Philadelphia. You can already go from Philadelphia to Valley Forge Park, and so it's not really a big stretch to get down that far. So that was the original satellite campus. It started off with 900 students. We're now at more than 3,000 students. And then we added this building. Now this used to be a Kiwi shoe polish building. If you ever use Kiwi shoe polish, this is where we made it in Potsdam, PA. And it's on the other side of the railroad tracks. It's kind of like this right down here, it's elevated. So even though the community college building's here and the warehouse or the Kiwi building is here, this is elevated. But fortunately, 100 years ago, somebody put in an arch. I don't know if they were planning to extend the road or whatever, but there was an arch and it was all overgrown and people didn't even know it was there. And so we were able to use that so you can go from the new community college building to the old one. And the important thing is we want to draw students into our downtown. Hard thing to do. Everybody's car will run in. We want to get them downtown. So this is the north building, the former Kiwi building, done over. Once again, tax credits. This building was bought by a private developer. He did it over with historic preservation tax credits, and then he signed a 20-year lease with the community college. They have the right to buy after 20 years. But he gets the full tax credit for this. This is a great way to get stuff done and to use some of the magnificent buildings you already have here in Latrobe to find the money to make it happen. Okay. So then the next part of our community college campus, this is the freight station across the tracks from the passenger station. Once again, same developer buys the freight station, and he's turned that into the 3rd building of the community college. So as you come into town, here's the freight station, here's the original community college building, here's the Kiwi plan, and then this is the 4th piece right here. Remember, we have a greenway down here. This is the first piece. When this was all owned This was their maintenance building. And they sold it to the borough for $50,000. And the front of it is the headquarters of the Schuylkill River Greenway Association, which has the right to administer greenway funds in the state and the federal government from Reading all the way down to Philadelphia. So the front of it is the Greenway building. The back of it is Green Studies, Environmental Studies, as part of the Montgomery County Community College satellite campus. And that is not quite done. So they're working on that. So we have a campus. I should go back. Let's show you this again. So we have a community college campus that's right next to downtown. And as they expand, we have some buildings here on High Street we'd love to see them expand into. So we've created a combination of a community college as you enter town, plus a greenway. And of course, you're doing exactly the same thing in Latrobe. It's impressive. Okay, so those are our historic districts. And we had a nonprofit corporation that used to buy houses in Pottstown. We just do the outsides. We wouldn't do the inside, we'd do the outside to show how nice it could be. And then the inside, that was sweat equity, somebody would buy it. And we did a number of those. And this is just a fantastic condo project waiting to happen. If this building was in the city of Philadelphia, it would be extremely expensive condos. Development is coming out to us. I don't expect it will be a whole long time before we'll use this over again. This was a shirt factory. Okay. So, then we wrote a zoning ordinance. In fact, I wrote a zoning ordinance. And here's how it came about. I was the chairman of the planning commission in the town for 12 years. And we went to the William Penn Foundation, which is the equivalent of the Heinz Endowments or Arkin Mellon in Pittsburgh. We went to the William Penn Foundation in Philadelphia, and we said, we're going to write this wonderful, innovative zoning ordinance. It's going to be form-based zoning, based on what buildings look like, and it's not going to get into side yards and setbacks, and so forth. And we're just going to make this a model ordinance, and municipalities all across Pennsylvania are going to want to adopt this zoning ordinance. So they gave us $55,000. And we got started on the ordinance. I hired somebody to write the ordinance. After about a month, I came to the conclusion it would be easier for me to write it. Because I knew Pottstown so well, having lived at that time here for 30 years. I knew all the buildings, the nooks and crannies and everything. And so I'll just write it myself, and then I'll use it and do it pro bono. I'm happy to do it. And then we'll use that money to hire design professionals. And if you walk away from nothing else with this idea that if you can get your foundations to provide money for design professionals, so when someone comes in and they want to do something, tell them, come in early. Don't spend a whole lot of money on architects and engineer. Just come on in. Tell us what you sort of have in mind, and then we'll design one and work back and forth with you so that it's a win for the municipality and a win for you. And that's worked out very well for us. And one of the things, I don't know if you do this in Latrobe, but one of the things we did was, I told you we had these 2 National Register districts, and they're down here. But we got as much of Pottstown declared eligible for the National Register as we could. And once we had, this was declared by the Bureau of Historic Preservation, which is the state agency that has the official word. Is something historic? Well, the Bureau of Historic Preservation said all of this green area is historic. Then in our zoning ordinance we said, this is a historic town, and so we want new development to blend in with what's already here. Okay, so we moved down the number of zones. We have a lot less zones. It still looks like a lot, but it's not really too many. There's a downtown zone, traditional town neighborhood zone, and a neighborhood residential. Now there's no side yards, there's no setbacks. What we're trying to do is give the municipality the maximum ability to apply discretion in what's approved and not approved. And in the zoning ordinance, I tried to make it reader-friendly, put in a lot of illustrations. The technical stuff that absolutely positively had to be in the zoning ordinance, we put it in the back. And then we said, under Pennsylvania law, a municipality, generally speaking, has 90 days to turn something down, to approve it or not to approve it. So we use that 90-day period and say, if you're going to go our way with what you're going to do, we'll speed things along. And if you're not, you're going to have to wait 90 days. Then you can do what you're going to do. Okay, now, when I was writing the ordinance, this was my Bible. The Reader's Digest Complete Do-It-Yourself Manual. When in the 1970s, when my wife and I bought our house and we didn't have much money, I zoning ordinance and the subdivision ordinance, we said we want to do a lot of pictures. Now, it's a fine thing to have a comprehensive plan, but as you know, it's the zoning ordinance that determines what gets built. In the comprehensive plan, that's just a vision. If you have a zoning ordinance that doesn't fit the vision of the comprehensive plan, you're going to get what the zoning says. So, as a journalist, I was good at making things shorter. So I took the 200-page comprehensive plan and I boiled it down to 3 pages, and I put it right in the zoning ordinance. So it's right in the beginning of the zoning ordinance, 3 pages, and with pictures, because I love pictures. We put it in and we said, look, Pottstown is historic, it's walkable, we have tree-lined streets, and we want the new things to match what's already there. So that's that. Now, trees. My favorite topic. You may have to get up and walk out when I talk about trees because I can go a long time on trees. Now, the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources is very proud of the fact that we have 219 state parks with 2 million acres of forest land, and that's wonderful. But you have to ask yourself, how often are you using all these parks? For example, here's my town of Pottstown, and about 6 or 7 miles away, we have French Creek State Park, more than twice the size of Pottstown. It's wonderful, forested trails, big lake, perfect. But I only get down there a couple of times a year. And then in Pottstown ourselves, you know, we have parks. What you do is very nice parks, and have a master park plan. How often do I get into our parks in Pottstown? Well, my wife is a big park goer, so I'd say 2 or 3 times a week. The street, on the other hand, I'm there every day. Everything I'm doing starts off with me walking out of my house and getting into the street. And so we need to start thinking about streets as not only a transportation system, but also a park. I mean, here kids are playing hockey on the street. They're perfectly safe. Traffic's going slow. They're probably there because mom said, "Don't get out of my sight," or whatever she said. And so they're using it. And when kids are walking to school, they're using the street system. So why not try and make it look like a park? I showed you this picture earlier of Paris. Paris has parks, but all their boulevards do double duty because the boulevards, the transportation system, is also a park. And they do it because they have enormously high trees. So here's a boulevard, there's the boulevard here. Does this feel like a park? I mean, these are all cafes out here. These are McDonald's, you can't help it. I mean, these high trees, it has a wonderful park-like atmosphere that people are enjoying every day. But it's not a park, it's a sidewalk, it's a pedestrian system. This is, I've been told, this is the #1 retail corridor in Europe. This is the Bahnhofstrasse in Zurich. This is the shopping street, the main shopping street. They allow taxis and trolleys and pedestrians. It feels like a park, but it's not a park, it's a shopping street. And when you look at some very high-class residential areas in the United States, this is Beacon Hill in Boston. Wherever you're not seeing buildings, you're seeing a tree canopy. This is Georgetown, Washington, D.C. Extremely expensive retail or housing. Some of the most expensive housing in the country is here, and the streets all feel like it's a park, and the houses are very close to each other. It's a very, very green place. This is Peach Street in Europe, and there's 4 lanes of traffic. This is a hideously ugly street. 4 lanes of traffic. This is Myers Park, Queens Boulevard, Myers Park, Charlotte, North Carolina. Look at the difference. It feels like a park, but it's not. It's a transportation corridor. Room for pedestrians, room for cars. Now, I always like to give the cathedral analogy. If you go into the sanctuary of a great cathedral, you'll see these big stone columns. That's an imitation of a tree trunk. And then when you look at the ceiling and see all this stone tracery, that's an imitation of tree branches. So this is the real thing. So you can take your streets and you can turn all your streets into cathedrals of green if you have trees that are going to be limbed up high, and you're going to have your tracery right here. And unlike a regular cathedral, it changes in beauty with the changes of season. I mean, in Pennsylvania, we do have changes of season. It's very attractive. And not only that, trees save an enormous amount of energy. In fact, a study done for the Department of Energy, reported in the MIT Technology Review, said the most cost-effective thing that cities can do in this country is to plant a lot of shade trees. Why? Because it reduces the need for air conditioning. This is This is Oklahoma City. Look at this. It's entirely buildings and parking lots. Totally impervious surface. This heats up. This is like an oven in the summer. You plant trees here, and you cool down the whole thing. This is my favorite borough. I happen to be born here. This is why I'm missing Pennsylvania. Why I'm missing your Reading and State College are the two finest tree programs in the state of Pennsylvania. And just look at the difference. I wish this would show you a little better, because it's almost looks like black and white. This is very green. But here's West Reading Borough, and here's the borough line, and look at the tree canopy. And it starts picking up. There's no reason why you can't have a tree canopy that's more than 50% of your surface area. Because the green is above the people. The people are down here. All you have is the trunks. The green stuff is up here, and that's cooling you. So when you're planting trees, the first thing is you got to make sure you're going to plant trees that get big. And you don't want to put little dinky trees because they're never going to get anywhere. You want to be able to limb up the tree trunks so that the canopy is up here above a 2-story building or close to above a 3-story building. This is a dogwood. That's never going to turn into a street tree. Some people use it, but it's not going to. You try and trim a tree up that's only 20 feet tall, you don't have to have a palm tree. That's what you got. So, in Paris, which has the best tree program probably in the world, they're starting off. The branches are already 20 feet off the ground, and they just planted this thing. So they've done this with the idea of creating the cathedral of the green. So the buses, the tractor trailers, whatever, don't have to worry about hitting tree branches, because it's all limbed up. This is Paris. What a wonderful atmosphere of walking. What a difference that these trees make. This is my favorite transportation corridor in the world. The Ringstrasse, parking lane for people walking, lane for bicyclists, lane for trolleys, 3 lanes for cars, and then they repeat the same thing on the other side, and they have 4 rows of trees. So even though you're in a major transportation corridor which is pumping a lot of cars up and down the street, it feels like a park. Okay. Now, when they started building low-density suburbs, they started building these wide streets that are twice as wide as they would have been. This is all impervious surface. That's not good for Mother Nature. But the original theory was, well, we're giving lots of driver error. So if you're, weaving back and forth, you can stay on the road. But all it does is encourage people to speed. Speed's the number one reason why people get killed on highways. Now, cars can mingle with people as long as the cars are going slowly. So it's only been in recent years, probably in the last decade, that in Pennsylvania and other states, they're starting to pick up the idea of traffic calming, where you actually put an obstacle in the street in order to force you to slow down. Like speed humps or speed bumps, force you to slow down. Chokers, where the street comes out, forces you to slow down to get in between here, and so forth. Well, a great traffic calming device is a tree. I know this is going to seem very far out there, but they wouldn't work. These trees are in the street. This is wrong. And the cars park in between the trees. Now, the advantage of this, first of all, this is a traffic calming device. Because you got these big obstacles. I just saw in the Latrobe bulletin, today someone was killed going into a tree. Well, I bet you wasn't going into a tree at 20 miles an hour. He would have been killed. Probably had been far. So if you have trees out here, it encourages people to slow down. Then you park the car in between the trees, and now the canopy can get over the street and over the sidewalk without running into the buildings. So you see that quite commonly. This is a former boulevard in Paris, and when I say a former boulevard, the Parisians would never tear down a building for a parking lot. I mean, that's an incredible waste of space. So when they built all these wide boulevards under Baron von Haussmann in 1850, 1870, some of them they turned basically into parking lots. There's one lane of moving traffic this way. There's one lane this way. And then there's parked cars on the other side of that lane. And then in the middle of the boulevard, they put another parking lot, one lane down the center, cars on the other side. And then they have 4 rows of huge plane trees. So this feels like a park. It operates like a street, and yet you're parking a lot of cars without cleaning up any space. Now, there are a few places in the United States that do have trees out in the streets. This is Mountain View, California, home of Google, headquarters of Google, where they're very advanced looking and thinking, and this slows down traffic, allows for that big canopy, and it uses the best use of your space. Now, another great place to plant trees is in parking lots. Whether they're empty, whether they're impervious surface. This all bakes in the summer, heats up your town. So what do? Well, look at an urban park. An urban park consists of asphalt or some kind of walking surface, and trees and benches. So you just take the benches out and you put the cars in, and now you have a parking lot for cars. Because a trunk doesn't take up much room. I mean, you're not going to have a lot of room with the tree trunks. If the green's all up here, nobody's up here. So it's shading you with providing green, but it's not taking up any space. You have to go all the way to France to find a really nice parking lot. But they do have a lot of parking lots in France with trees. So getting back to the zoning ordinance, we left nothing to the imagination. We have, this is our zoning ordinance, subdivision ordinance, and we put in some samples of how we'd like to see trees. Actually, this is subdivision. And in subdivision, we can waive this, and some people scream and cry. But this is the Housing Authority of Montgomery County, and they agreed to put in 1 tree for every 2 parking spaces. This is early on, and this is just last year. It's been in for about 7 years, and it's already starting to fill out and feel like a park. Now, you don't have to give up parking spaces to plant trees, because where cars come together, there's a dead zone right here. There aren't any doors here. This is where all the engines are coming together. So if you use the zoning and plant the trees here, you don't have to lose 1 parking space, which is very important in some areas, and you can't sacrifice any spaces. Will this tree get as big as if it was in another area? No, but it's still a lot of room. And in Montgomery County, I talked about the latest building to be built by the community college. This used to be the Philadelphia Electric Maintenance Yard. They also built a green parking lot, 202 parking spaces, 130 trees, bioswales. This is state-of-the-art parking lot. And this is going to look like the rest of the forest when in 10 years or so, but the trees will all be elevated up here, so the green's up here, people are down here. Now, what's the #1 obstacle to planting trees? Is lifted sidewalks. People hate lifted sidewalks. Cut down that tree, lifted my sidewalk, and trees are going to act in a very predictable manner. So I asked you this question: why do we make the sidewalks out of concrete, and why do we devote so much space to concrete? I'm very pleased with the Pennsylvania Infrastructure Investment Authority. For years, since the Casey administration, gives out money to build stormwater, storm sewers, to build sanitary sewers, to build water treatment plants, sewage treatment plants. But now, in the last couple of years, they're giving money to municipalities to plant trees. Trees! Because they know the trees are a very cost-effective stormwater management device. So, one of the things you want to do is you want to rip up all this concrete you don't need. The original tree well was here. We made the tree well a lot bigger, give the roots more room. People think, this is a little tiny tree, why do you have this big well? Because this tree isn't going to be a little tiny forever. In fact, there's already more concrete than there ought to be here. So when we're retrofitting sidewalks in Potsdam, we're trying to encourage people, just don't put anything back. This is a lot cheaper. Just put grass in here, or ground cover, or something like that. Look at that. Here's a terribly lifted sidewalk. Okay, but why is this here? Why just remove it? We still have 4.5 feet. This is not downtown area where there's a tremendous amount of pedestrian traffic. So a very good device for preventing sidewalks from lifting up is to try, first of all, to try and have planting strips. Sometimes you can just go around the tree if you have a yard. And as I said, this is a stormwater management device. This is a plane tree that could pick up 1,000 gallons of water a year. 1,000 gallons of water a year is going to land on this tree in an average year, and it's going to sit here and slowly going to percolate into the ground. And this is much more cost-effective and much more attractive than putting a cement ditch through the town. And the city of Philadelphia now is the biggest city in America to do a complete green infrastructure plan. The city of Lancaster is doing a green infrastructure plan. Nothing more than saying, let's tear up all that excess asphalt and let's plant a lot of trees. Because trees absorb stormwater as well as all the other benefits that they talk about. New York City already has 600,000 street trees. It's just street trees. And Mayor Bloomberg wanted to plant 1 million trees, of which 200,000 would be street trees, and they're halfway there. And the next time you're in New York City, in Manhattan, whatever, you'll see these little tabs on freshly planted trees, 1 in a million. Very important. So you'd like to have at the least amount of concrete as possible. And we put that in our zoning and subdivision plans. But now I would like to bring up this issue, one of my favorite pet clauses is concrete. Why do we make our sidewalks out of concrete? Makes no sense at all. This is asphalt. All our streets are asphalt. All our parking lots are asphalt. Why are we using concrete? Because concrete, first of all, it cracks. It's rigid. And second of all, it's poured in slabs, and so it becomes uneven. It lifts up. And then people say, oh, it's the damn tree. Well, the tree is acting the way a tree is going to act. So you should be smarter than the tree. You should figure out a way you can put a sidewalk next to a tree. And even when there are no trees, you have all these lifted sidewalks. Now here's Paris. This is high-end real estate. That's an asphalt sidewalk. Asphalt sidewalks are very common in Europe. One of the nice things is a tree root can grow right through it. And the worst you're going to get is a bump. You're not going to get a lip. It's flexible. You can go around the tree that's growing into the street. So what? And then the greenways. I'm sure the greenways in Westmoreland County are practically all asphalt. Unless they're crushed stone, they're asphalt. So, and this is Longwood Gardens, beautiful garden, or the loveliest garden probably in the United States, in my neck of the woods in Chester County. And it's all asphalt walkways. Harvard Yard, I mean, expensive. Harvard University, asphalt. Princeton University, asphalt. New England, a lot of New England towns, the sidewalks are made of asphalt. So what's the magic? And in Pottstown, what we find is they're not supposed to be in the street when they're in the scooter. They're supposed to be on the sidewalk. But they're in the street because, in the wheelchair, this is a bike lane, they're in the bike lane because there's no posts. This is asphalt. So this is much more comfortable for them to go up and down. And they certainly would recommend it because of the fact that there's no seams in asphalt that's smooth river. So we got permission, we have a nonprofit trees and program, we got permission to do some asphalt retrofits, very badly lifted sidewalk, jackhammered out, grind down the root just a little bit, didn't have to do it much, and put in asphalt. This isn't level, but this is handicap accessible, this is ADA compliant. And early on, you're really painting it, we painted it with traffic marking paint. But there's a better solution I'll get to in a second. So here you have an asphalt that's living with the tree. You're doing everything a sidewalk needs to do. Okay. Now you may have heard that in Manhattan and New York, Mayor Bloomberg has started to reclaim some streets for people. This is Broadway, where they actually put planters in Broadway. They narrowed the number of traffic lanes. They put benches and tables out here for people. And then they differentiated it by spraying this epoxy solution on here, which is supposed to be very long lasting. So that's what we use in Pottstown. This is this epoxy stuff. So they use it for their bike lanes. They're adding hundreds of miles of bike lanes in New York City as we speak. So we took another block, terribly ripped up sidewalk, totally a mess, removed them all, found out that we really didn't even have any roots to grind, laid down that old asphalt, poured out. It's much cheaper than concrete, by the way, pounded it down, and then we brought in the epoxy folks, and they come in and they spray it with epoxy. And this is supposed to last a long time, comes in all colors, we have these certified colors, and they spray this down, and now you have a sidewalk that's compatible with your tree. Now another instance, and then I'll get off trees, I think I'm going right. Another instance is you have a slightly lifted sidewalk. American technology comes to the rescue. There is a specially designed saw that will bevel down the edges. It's ADA compliant. So the concrete's already there. Rather than jackhammer it all out, just bevel it down. They draw a line, and then this is a guy with his patented saw, and he's beveling this down. I first saw this at the University of Pennsylvania one day, and found out who was doing it, and we brought them to Pottstown. And we've done some beveled sidewalks. We've done about 180 of them. And they're a lot less expensive than trying to jackhammer out concrete. This is ADA compliant. Just leave the concrete in place. It's a cemetery next to my house, before and after, beveled off. Cheap solution, this long. So, in the 1980s, when we lost Bethlehem Steel, we also lost Firestone, the second biggest tire plant in the United States, closed just outside of Pottstown in 1980. We decided to plant a lot of trees. We had a nonprofit corporation, raised $500,000. We're still in business. We planted around 2,000 trees. Now these are some before pictures of Pottstown. they're black and white because it was our newspaper photographer taking these pictures in 1983. This is what we look like. Now I'm going to show you some afters. We did a newspaper campaign. My newspaper did a campaign to plant trees, and that's what it's called. Now I'll show you some befores and afters. This is before, after, same street. Before, after, this is 10 years after, this is 20 years after. Start going up, they start to get that wonderful canopy over the street. So, an inexpensive way to dramatically improve your community is just plant trees that will get big, and to remember about the root systems and to make sure that they're a sidewalk compatible. This was a gas station. Guy tore down the gas station. He donated it to our nonprofit, Trees Incorporated. We put in 2 feet of topsoil and gravel, and we planted 35 trees. This is a green area. It's a passive park, but it's also stormwater management, because when it rains, the rainwater gets caught in these tree leaves and slowly percolates into the gravel. So this is a very cost-effective way of stormwater management. So we put all of that into the ordinance, talking about the things we wanted to do. Now, you don't have wide streets like we do, but I would like to encourage you to think of the assets you have. If you have a parking lot, not only do you want to put trees in it, you want to put cars in it. There's nothing worse than an empty parking lot. I mean, if you pave the thing over, you want to make it sure it's maximum used and it's full of cars. And we had this ultra-wide Main Street, and we used to have angle parking until the 1940s. And it's also a state highway, and PennDOT in 1948 said, you got to get rid of that angle parking. We've decided it's dangerous, but we want traffic flow, we want cars to be able to flow up and down the Main Street, and they did. And we helped kill off the retail development, because now we have 2 lanes in each direction, and parallel parking, which is not the easiest thing to do, and it's a wide street to cross and so forth, and we try to get angle parking back. And it wasn't easy because, if I can slide up that, yes, because PennDOT, in its wisdom, requires a backup lane. Now, if you're already there, but if you wanted to put in angle parking on a state highway where it doesn't exist now, you have to have a backup lane. Well, then you're not gaining any spaces because you still have 2 lanes, and people are not going to speed down just because you call it a backup. So we decided to put it back in angle parking. And we said to PennDOT, you don't require a backup lane for parallel parking. And he said, well, that's because you drive past the space and you back up, and then you go back and forth. And we said, well, hold it. If you put in back and angle parking, now you're done. You don't have to do anything else. You park the car, it's easier. So we got in back and angle parking, and I'll tell you how we got it. We got it because there was no back and angle parking in Pennsylvania. And therefore, PennDOT did not have a regulation saying we couldn't do it. Brad Mallory went through the rule book and said, oh, okay. So this is Wilmington, Delaware. There are actually quite a few communities that have back and angle parking. This is growing in popularity, and this is a real triumph. That's the U.S. Capitol building. Recently, they put back and angle parking on Pennsylvania Avenue. I love it. So anyway, we got permission to do that. And we had these back-end lanes on one side of the street, and that allowed us to put in bike lanes. And if you're backing in, even if you're blocked by a van, you can still look up far enough to see a bicycle that's coming or to see a car coming. So it's very safe to have back-end angle parking. And so we got in the bike lanes. Just by doing that, we added the number of parking spaces downtown by 93. We increased our on-street parking 25% just by going to back and angle parking. So you're thinking, you have streets around here, how can we get the maximum productivity out of that street? And once we put the bike lanes in, and this was the helpful editorial of Philadelphia Inquirer. It says inspiration, well, it was inspiration. So anyway, then with more spaces downtown, we make it easier for people to use the second floors. These are really nice apartments above here, and we count the parking spaces twice. So for retail, you want to put in new retail, we'll count on-street parking for that. And then if you want to put in housing, we'll count off-street parking for that, we'll count it twice. Because we say, well, this van is here during the daytime for commercial, and this car is here during the nighttime for the apartment, so we count that space twice. Because we're trying to get the upper floors filled. They're beautiful, and they make beautiful apartments, they bring people downtown. So we've had a lot of downtown activity. This is a real estate guy, and he has a magnificent apartment. Look at these windows. I mean, this is his bedroom. It has a beautiful view. So it's really good. And then once we put in the bike lanes, we started getting bicycles. And then after we started getting bicycles, we got a bike shop. We have a bike shop on the main street, and they've been around for about 2 years. And now we have a free bike program where they have in Philadelphia or Washington and New York went in, where you can get a bicycle free. You come in, you show your driver's license, and then you can rent a bike all day long free, and you just have to return it at the end of the day. You can go rent it again next morning, or you can get it again free the next morning. And so this has been very helpful. Once again, this didn't show very well. But this is our greenway, and right here we have a big sign. It's our greenway going up to Reading. This is in the woods by our downtown. We have a sign saying on the greenway, this is all the neat stuff you can do in downtown Pottstown. And we have a map, and we show them we've got a bike lane on High Street. So you want to continue on down this way. We don't tell them that they dead end and keep going any further. But someday they will be able to when we extend the greenway. Okay, now remember I talked about design professionals. I am almost done. The design professionals, this is where they come in. We have a church. They owned this house, a very historic house. And they had another house next to it, they tore it down. And they wanted to put in a parking lot, and they wanted to come off onto our main street, High Street. And we don't want driveways onto High Street. You know what? So, this was their plan. That was a really poorly designed plan, hardly any spaces out of it. We said, look, let's have our design profession. No cost to you. We'll just do it over. So he did it over, and he put, just by putting in perpendicular parking, he's giving them more parking spaces. And then we said, this is an 1820s house. Wouldn't you like to put a colonial garden next to it? And let's get an art student to do a drawing showing this house, a little bit of fence, and garden. So you get more parking spaces. You just come in and off the alley, and look how nice that is. And they agreed to do it. And, they're going to put in a tree at some point. They've got the parking back here. So we eliminated the driveway just by making a suggestion. You don't ever want to have parking on the street if you can avoid it. You always want to put parking behind the buildings. And this is in our zoning ordinance, not leaving it to your imagination. We actually have the drawings there. This is a lovely little borough near Pottstown called Boyertown. And they have a central parking lot in the middle of their business district. So these are the buildings all the way around their street. These are commercial buildings, the retail buildings. The parking's in the center. Everybody knows how to find it and how to get there. So this is what it looks like from the street, and this is what it looks like from the interior. Very good way to do it. And Better Models, it was Denny who dropped this off. This is a great publication, which you can get from the DCNR, or DCED, excuse me, showing that retail developers, fast food outlets, Lowe's, Home Depot, now they will build a building that's compatible with your architecture if you put it in your zoning ordinance and make them do it. Now, I love this example. This is Freeport, Maine, sleepy little town, home of LL Bean, and became famous because of LL Bean, which is open every day including Christmas. And they became an outlet center. And they said, okay, we're an outlet center, but we're going to look like a New England town. So, all the new buildings have to look like a house, or they have to look like they fit into a small town, even though they're not. This is a McDonald's, and Freeport made McDonald's put it in an existing farmhouse. They said, put the big part in the back, but from the street, we'd like to see the farmhouse. Put the parking lot on the side, have a modest sign. McDonald's said, no. It got into a court case, a lawsuit, won. Freeport wins, McDonald's loses. 3 years later, what do they put in their annual report? Look at what we did in Freeport, Maine. Isn't it neat? So now, McDonald's will come into your town and do what you want to do if you ask them to do it. I'll give you an example in a second. So these are outlets that are looking like they belong in a small town. And all the parking is hidden from the street. You see, there's tons of parking here. There's some big boxes here, but you can't see any of it from the street. Rite Aid wanted to put this on our High Street. We redesigned it and said you can keep the building the same way. This should look red right here. Make it red brick, same floor plan, same footprint, blah, blah, blah. But they wanted to put a parking lot in front with a back and forth. They conceded to put in brick columns and an iron fence, so at least we have a street. Then McDonald's else and build a new one. We said, hallelujah, tear it down by all means. Because of our ordinance, McDonald's actually, but that's amazing. They flew an architect in from Chicago and designed this building. And we said, it's perfect. Don't change the thing. We love it. And so this is, the only thing they didn't love was they wanted to put it back. They wanted to put it in the front. And it got down to their delivery truck. This is our McDonald's, a very handsome looking McDonald's. We didn't have to even negotiate. This was what they offered to do the first time. But they had to put it back so they could get their delivery truck in there. But really, so there's space here, but there's no parked cars here. This is very attractive, and they agreed to put in the brick columns and the iron fence. And that's just from putting it in the zoning ordinance and asking. This is an auto zone, it's a god-awful auto zone coming up here, and this is the design they've agreed to accept. Simply because, you ask them to do it. So, in the entryway to our town, remember I told you this is our community college, this is our downtown, this is our version of Lloyd Avenue. We had Mrs. Smith's Pie Company, they moved to Georgia, and they tore all those buildings down, and what they wanted to put in was apartment blocks. So that when you came into town, you'd be looking at a parking lot behind apartment blocks. We completely redesigned that for them at our expense, using our design professionals that we got with money from the William Penn Foundation, and we turned it into mixed use. These are townhouses, and this is a brick commercial building, which they have not built yet, but they started the townhouses. And all the parking is in the back. So that's the commercial building. This is once again, the color was turning up. This would be red, brick. And then these are the houses, and this is behind the houses, so you don't see any parking in front of the houses. These are all brick. That's right in the agreement that they have to make them out of brick, if you can see it from the river. This is my last one. Somebody came in and they wanted to put in a little strip mall, and they wanted to put some houses behind, some townhouses, and 2 single-family detached houses in the floodplain, no less. And then they have this whole road here just for 2 houses, a real waste of time. So what we said was, why don't you make it into a crescent? Now this is the nicest strip mall in America. If you're ever in New York, on Long Island, Stonywood, Long Island, this was a strip mall built in 1940, and it's in the form of a crescent. And these are really nice looking New England buildings. They're all 1 story, and this is a park in the center of the crescent. There's ample parking here. Big grocery store, but you can't see it from the street because it's hidden by these buildings. So here you are in the park, very attractive looking buildings. At the crest of the crescent is the Stony Brook Post Office. The eagle flaps its wings on the arrow. It's kind of cool to see. So anyway, and here's the parking. There's plenty of parking, but you're not overwhelmed with parked cars. And this is the sidewalk in front of the strip mall. So it's very attractive. So we said to them, why don't you take this, turn it on its side, okay? If you do that, we'll let you put 2nd floor on the commercial here, and you can put in apartments. And then here are the townhouses, and you'll have more townhouses than you had before, making up for the 2 houses you've lost here. And this is now a park and a green space. And now we're going to count these parking spaces twice. We're going to count them once for commercial, because that's going to be used during the daytime, and once at night for the townhouses. And then this is the stormwater management. This is the retention basin. It's not going to look like a retention basin. It's going to look like a park. So we wrote in crescent zoning. And it's not just here. Anywhere on High Street, you happen to want to put in a crescent, and you have the right configuration, you can do that. So this has been approved, but it hasn't not been built, but it has been approved. The developer's quite happy because he did a lot more development out of it. So the last thing I'll just throw in, and I'm just about done here, this is the entryway to Pottstown, which is just like every other town, hideously ugly. And just as your students at the IUP have done a plan for Lincoln Highway, we had a plan done. We weren't smart enough to get some Palestinians to do it for us. We actually paid good money to do it. But the whole idea is you want to put in a sidewalk, and you want to put in trees, and you want to have a place for people to walk, and you want to narrow the street, give what they call road diet. So you have a sidewalk along here to be better for this asphalt. And you put in big trees, and you want to have modest signage. You want to do that. And so we've done a plan, and we would put in bike lanes. So instead of 2 lanes of traffic in each direction, you have 1 lane in each direction, plus a bike lane, plus a sidewalk, plus a planting strip. So those are my thoughts as far as some things. There might be one or two things that you can pick up and find useful in Latrobe. Thank you very much. I'm amazed at the hardy souls who stayed. Thank you.